Welcome to Anti-Woke and Autistic. The word enormous, what do you think of? Well, do you think of Mount Everest? Do you think of some nameless, unidentified server somewhere in Louisiana 12 years ago, whom Emily Blunt 11 or 12 years ago referred to as enormous? People are acting, namely the fat acceptance community, they're acting as though Emily Blunt on the Jonathan Ross show that took place in the UK, they're in 2012, they're acting as though she actually named this individual. She just said, now correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing we know about this person, at least at the time that the show was recorded, was that she was a waitress, a server at a Chili's in Louisiana. I don't even know if Emily Blunt mentioned it was Louisiana. I never saw the entire clip, but I am going to show you the clip in its context because people are taking it out of context. For instance, the host, Jonathan Ross, is the one who first used the word enormous in reference to the size of people's bodies, and then Emily Blunt simply followed up on that as normal, casual conversation. There was nothing scripted. It was all unscripted. It was spontaneous. It was just like natural small talk type conversation, and she's getting vilified for it. Now, I'm not saying it was nice of her or kind of her to refer to this unidentified person as enormous, but it's just people are jumping on her as though she went way, way, way beyond the scope of normal, typical American conversation or human conversation, I should say. And again, I'm not saying just because it's common to talk that way, it's just wonderful and gracious and smacking of social graces. But why is Emily Blunt being vilified for this? Is it because she's a celebrity? Is it because she's attractive? Is it because she said it on TV? People talk this way all the time and they don't get chewed out for it. Gee whiz, again, it's not like she mentioned the person's name. So here's the clip in its context. Now listen carefully because the host, Jonathan Ross, he initiates the fat acceptance people who are ultra sensitive keep saying that Emily spoke out of context. She just threw it out there and it had nothing to do with the conversation that had preceded it. It was irrelevant. No, it wasn't. It had everything to do with it. Her response was natural and fit in with the preceding words that came out of the host's mouth. Listen to this.
You go to Chili's, you can see why so many of our American friends are enormous. Because I ordered a starter once and it was like 4 mini burgers and they were as big as...
He says something like, if you didn't hear it, you could see why so many of our American friends are enormous. And that got a lot of laughter out of the audience. I'll play that again. Listen very carefully.
You go to Chili's, you can see why so many of our American friends are enormous. Because I ordered a starter once and it was like 4 mini burgers.
You could see why so many of our American friends are enormous. So he's already putting the adjective, the word enormous, into Emily's head. Yes, she didn't have to say it, but remember, this is unscripted. It's spontaneous, just like any social, casual conversation two people might have at the water cooler or anywhere in life. And the fat acceptance people are just overreacting to this as though she committed a heinous crime. They're such babies. Or as Alan Roberts would say, they're weak ass pussies. I normally don't speak that way, but that is a pretty good descriptor of them. So here's more of it.
And they were as big as proper burgers.
Yeah. Well, the girl who was serving me was enormous. You know, I think she got freebie meals at Chili's.
Nothing wrong with that.
So she says, the girl who was serving me was enormous. How can you be, if the fat acceptance community is truly in acceptance of their size, and especially if they think they're sexy and beautiful and gorgeous and perfect just the way they are, then some comment about a total stranger whose name they don't even know would not bother them, would not faze them a single bit. It would not bother them. Now, if she's talking about their mother specifically their mother, that's different. You know that person, you love her, your mother, your daughter, your sister, your best friend. We don't know who she's talking about here. And the more attention this gets, the more likely whoever this individual is who was serving her 12 years ago, the more likely somebody is going to know who Emily was talking about, and she's going to be outed because people are making such a big deal about this. And you might be thinking, well, I'm contributing to that by making a video. Well, my video is not about vilifying Emily Blunt and accusing her of being this horrible, awful, disgusting human being. My video is about why are we making such a big deal about this, in the sense that everybody is calling her fatphobic, accusing her of being evil, and I'm going to show you a reaction to her in just a moment. But you might be thinking, what if somebody said something about autism, because I'm autistic, and said something like, well, my server was obviously autistic. You could tell by her rather monotone voice and lack of facial expression. That wouldn't hurt my feelings. She's simply stating a fact. Just like she's saying the server was enormous, she's stating a fact. Maybe she really was enormous. Maybe she really was like 350 on a 5'4" frame. So if somebody says, well, my server was obviously autistic, she had a monotone voice, she was flapping her hands a little bit, I mean, that wouldn't upset me at all, even if I knew she was referring to me, because it's true. If an autistic person has those traits, she's not lying. She's simply stating a fact in a very matter-of-fact, casual manner. She was enormous. He was bald. He was really, really tall. Oh, he was really skinny, or my server was really thin. What if Emily had said, actually, Jonathan, my server was really thin? Would there be an outcry? Would there be criticism? Would there be accusations of thin phobia? What if she had said, well, actually, my server was pretty skinny? Would the fat acceptance be chewing her out about that? No. Would women who would like to gain weight because they don't like being thin, women who would like to put on some meat on their bones, would they be vilifying her? No, of course not. What if Emily Blunt's server had been a man and she said, well, he was pretty enormous. Well, he was enormous. He was rotund. He was pretty portly. Would men be outcrying about this? Would men be whining and complaining and bitching about it like the women are in the fat acceptance community? Women, especially women, have gotten so super ultra soft. Sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but names can never hurt me. Whatever happened to that? She didn't even name who this individual is. Let's look at a TikTok reaction to this.
The girl who was serving me was enormous. You know, I think she got freebie meals.
I know this is like an old interview, but what a fucking cunt. What a fucking cunt.
Seems to me that calling somebody a fucking cunt, especially when we all know who that insult is directed to, is a lot more evil than referring to an unidentified person as enormous. There's all sorts of TikTok videos similar to that in which these women are acting as though Emily is one notch above a mass shooter. What I'm doing is bashing the fat acceptance community for taking this so seriously, getting histrionic about it, overreacting to it, pouting about it, getting all bent out of shape, losing sleep over it, posting all these ridiculous TikToks. That's what I'm criticizing. How do these fat acceptance people get through the daily grind of living if one word spoken by somebody they don't even know personally about an unidentified individual can rattle their cage so much? Women, fat acceptance women are so overly sensitive. Again, I'm not endorsing, going around referring to people as enormous, but we have to look at the greater context here. It wasn't scripted, it was just a form of spontaneous on-stage small talk, and we must not forget that the host is the one who introduced the word enormous in the first place. How come nobody is criticizing Jonathan Ross for referring to so many of our American friends are enormous? How come nobody's biting his head off? He just called the entire population of the United States, or at least so many, as enormous. How come nobody's criticizing him? Is it because he's talking about a bunch of people in general? Well, Emily Blunt didn't exactly identify the person who waited on her. So, in both cases, the targeted people of the word enormous are unidentified. They're mysterious. They're nameless. So she gets all the criticism, but nobody's criticizing Jonathan Ross when he referred to our American friends, so many. What does so many mean? Well, in 2012, it was like 40% of the American population was obese. So, technically speaking, if you want to get really nitpicky about this, Jonathan Ross was referring to 40% of the American population. And there's like in 2012, when that broadcast occurred, there were like, I don't know, 310, I don't know, 310 Americans, 310 million Americans, excuse me, 310 million, let's just round it off. 300 million Americans. 40% of that, I'm just going to toss out a number that's pretty close, like 130 million, 125 million. So Jonathan Ross was referring to approximately 120 million, or tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans, referring to them as enormous. Emily Blunt was referring to just one person as being enormous, yet she's getting crucified. She's getting fried and filleted by all these overly sensitive fat acceptance TikTokers, yet nobody's mentioning Jonathan Ross. Is that because he's a man and these fat acceptance women who think they're so tough and confident are afraid to criticize a man on social media? Could that be it? Why is it that when that was filmed in 2012, nothing was made about it? Nobody made a big deal about it. And now suddenly it's headline news. And why is Emily Blunt submitting to the weak mindedness of fat acceptance people who are almost always women by profusely apologizing as though she committed a crime against a little old lady by knocking her down and mugging her or something? She said what people all over are always saying: if you don't like being enormous, if you find it insulting, do something about it. Stop making excuses and stop stuffing your face with junk food. Hit the gym or do some kind of exercise. Don't just do little dance parties in your kitchen. That's not going to cut it when it comes to fat loss. If you love being fat, if you think you're gorgeous, if you love your belly rolls, if you love your big arms, then a comment made by some actress you've never met referring to an unnamed server somewhere in Louisiana shouldn't faze you in the least. And if that is your biggest problem, then you must have a pretty perfect life. Get over it. And if the words and adjectives of people you don't even know about people you don't even know make you lose sleep, then you have a big, huge mental health problem.